Hello, and welcome to this amazing interview with Laura Richards. I need to tell you a little bit about what I know about Laura. She is an amazing person. We've had the opportunity to speak at different things and to get to know each other a little bit. And I want to just tell you a little bit about Laura besides her amazing chapter in the book, The Other Side of Divorce. Laura is an international podcaster. She's a number 1 best-selling author, and she's a speaker dedicated to empowering women. Through her global podcast, That's Where I'm At, and her best-selling book, Married to a Nice Guy, Getting Over Narcissistic Abuse, Laura shares her personal journey of recovery from a 32-year marriage to a narcissist. Drawing from her own experiences, Laura's mission is simple: to shine a light on narcissistic abuse and let women know they are never alone and that healing is always possible. With genuine care, authenticity, and an unwavering commitment to the truth, Laura helps women rebuild their worth, reclaim their voices, and step into a future filled with confidence and strength. Laura, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I am going to step off the screen and let you just tell us a little bit about the topic that you want to discuss here today.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. When I left my 32-year marriage, which is something I never thought I would do, I really felt alone because, I wasn't in these circles where people are talking about abuse or even narcissism because I didn't even know what a narcissist was. I just knew I had a husband that was difficult. And so when I left my marriage, I started to heal and go through the process of like journaling and just I went to the beach because the beach is so healing, things like that. And what I found as I was talking to others was that I felt really alone. I felt like no one understood me. And then I started to hear from people that they really didn't want me to talk about this kind of thing that had happened to me and what my story was, which I didn't understand. But I understand now that it's people's own comfort zone of what they want to hear and what they've been through in their life. And maybe they've even been through it, but they're not comfortable talking about it. So I started doing even more work after I found out some things as I started unraveling when I was going through therapy and journaling and just different things. I found out a bunch of lies and betrayals. And so I started to really work from a different mindset. And what that felt like in my body was terrible. It really felt like a death because I was grieving a person who was still alive. I was grieving a past that didn't make sense to me. I was grieving 32 years of a marriage that felt like it was all a lie. And so that was really mentally devastating. And so I started to do even more healing. And I found a group of women who were talking about these things. And I really wanted to be one of those women that showed people that on the other side of abuse, there is hope. And so I just started talking. I was very petty on social media. And, as sometimes we can be, but I started talking on social media and it started to resonate with people that I was talking about something that no one talked about. And so I wanted to use my voice even more. But what I really had to do was do a lot of healing. I had to heal from what I knew in the past and also who I was. A friend called me Laura 2.0. Who is she going to be in the future? Having spent 55 years as one person, when you get divorced, it starts to show like, who was I? Who am I? What am I going to do next? And so that's really been my focus is healing because I noticed that I really didn't know who I was. I thought it was for 32 years of my life. I didn't know who I was, but really it was for 55 years of my life. I didn't know who I was. Sometimes we're taught wrong in society. We're taught to be the good girl. And if you follow these rules, you're going to get everything you want. While having a family and kids and a husband was everything I did want, I compromised and lost my integrity along the way. It's like I was out of integrity somewhere with myself and what I truly wanted and what I allowed people in my life to do. And So later on, as I'm going through healing and really digging deep, and did a little bit of inner child work, which was amazing to really understand who was Laura, who is she now, who will she be for the future, how can she make a difference? Because that core belief of helping other people has always been there. And I've just really, whether it's a trauma response or not, we're not going to talk about that. But the thing is that sometimes I've always felt that way. It's why I went into special education. It's why I've done so many things in my life, why I've led women's groups in my church and things that have just always wanted to help others. And then when we walk alongside other people in their pain, it's so amazing. It's, as a human, we have such a deep need to be seen and heard. And so that's something I've always felt. And that was a deep need I had going through my divorce and then understanding what was happening to me. And so soon after, I started doing a podcast because I decided instead of being petty on social media, how about we actually do some good in the world? And so I started talking about things that society has told us not to talk about. And so I really, it's no hold bar, and I just talk about everything. It has become mostly about narcissism, but it's about our healing journeys and how there's hope on the other side, and how we can actually, if we're not dead, we're not done. And how can we move forward with joy and happiness and not having to rely on other people clapping for us, but for just knowing who we truly are and what our true joy really is.
I love that. And I know that that really is your heart in this because, like I said, we've had many conversations. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, Laura. And I know that you've written an amazing chapter for the book. So I'm going to encourage everybody to definitely read Laura's chapter. But what do you think, or what do you see is maybe the most difficult thing of coming out of these narcissistic relationships? Because you talk a lot about a covert narcissist.
Yeah.
Can you maybe just explain to somebody who's listening and they're going, well, when I think of narcissist, I think of, I'm not going to name anybody, but,
Yes.
I think of somebody who's like bragging about themselves and thinks
Yes.
they're better and the only person that can do.
Grandiose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not what a lot of narcissists look like. So can you talk a little
I
bit about
know.
that?
Yes. So I had a covert narcissist. So covert narcissist is one way at home and one way out in public. And at home, they may be belittling you and telling you that you can't do anything right, all those kinds of things. Really, they really are chipping away at your self-esteem so that you are a shell of a person by the end. And in society, they are well respected. They're maybe serving in their community. They're a leader in their community, things like that. And so it's confusing. And that's part of it. They really are out there to really mess with your head and get you confused. A lot of gaslighting where that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. Everybody else likes me. There must be something wrong with you because you aren't seeing it the way everybody else is seeing it. And that's how I ended up staying for 33 years total because I didn't understand. I really did think it was my own issue. And so with a covert narcissist, they chip away until you're a shell of a human. They
Yeah.
just do it so that they don't have to have accountability for whatever it is that they're doing behind the scenes.
Right. And I think that's what's so important is to understand that they really do look like a nice guy or gal when
Yes.
they're out in public. I mean, they may hold your hand. They may, appear to put you on a pedestal. They may ask your opinions. But and I've never been in a relationship with a covert narcissist to my knowledge, but I've talked to many women who have, and some men who have been, who say like, you just know what to answer, even if you're out in public, because if you answer wrong, you're going to deal with it when you get home. And that doesn't necessarily mean physical violence, but it certainly can be physical violence as well.
Right. And that's a thing with why I think it was so interesting to go through and learn about what I had gone through. I'm learning even still every day because they don't have to put their hands on you it's coercion in many ways. The things they say to you, the things they force you to do, Because there was never a threat in my mind that he was going to physically hurt me. But I have to say that towards the end of my marriage, I would have physically just hurt myself because that's the point that you get to. You get to a point where you can't even, you're such a shell of a human, you can't even think of how do I get out of this? That's a thing that I never understood growing up. I always said that if I was ever in abuse, I would just leave. But the manipulation that happens and your brain chemistry, the way it changes when you're being abused, that you can't even imagine leaving.
Right.
You truly can't. And that whole thing with you said, answering, it's so interesting because I just remember so many fights were about that I didn't answer quick enough or the right answer, or it doesn't seem like you want to. And it's like, it didn't matter. So these are the kind of things. Now, that didn't happen in public. In public, they may actually say things to you that only is a slight or
Yeah.
is a put down, and that's called dog whistling. And so it makes you feel really bad. Like they could even compliment the living heck out of somebody in public when you were dying to get a compliment. But
Yeah.
they'll do it to a stranger or to somebody. And in my case, it was to the one he ended up marrying next. He would just like dote on her. And then at home, I'd be dying. My heart would just be dying.
Yeah. I've had so many people talk about their partner, blatantly comparing them to somebody else in the room, you know, like giving a compliment, let's say to somebody and saying, "Oh, that's a beautiful dress," or "Oh, that's a beautiful suit you're wearing," and then
Yeah.
turn around and say, "You wouldn't look half as good in the same thing." Like things like
Yes.
that.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you
People
know,
don't get it. It's
and
so,
somebody just listening may think, "Oh, that's just a joke," or they may, and the person who says it sometimes even laughs to make it sound like a joke. But you get drip fed that 24 hours a day, 32 years of your life.
yes,
That's going to
exactly.
have a horrible mental toll on you. So let's talk a little bit about how did you, because you were in a really dark place when you finally
Yeah.
were able to leave. Because I've read your
Yeah.
book, so I know the kind of stuff that you were going through. How did you get the courage, or what was
Yeah.
the, where did you break free of all that coercion and control and say, to hell with you, buddy, I'm doing
Yeah.
this.
Well, look, I surprised myself that I wanted to leave. I really did because that just isn't something I would have done. But the last 2 years of our marriage were so bad, so dark that I went to therapy to figure out why I was so sad, not even considering that I'm being that I'm being emotionally abused at home. Just to go to therapy, which is, ironic because he thought I should go to therapy because I was still sad 5 months later that our sister-in-law had passed away. Here's an idea. And my mom had passed away the year before. So I was still sad about those things. Those things were very traumatizing. And I'm sorry, I'm going back. We have to remember that those things are traumatizing in themselves, but then when you've already been through 32 years of dysregulation and you already have trauma, maybe from your past, or it's a constant trauma of being in this emotionally abusive place, even a death, which of course was devastating, becomes an even bigger deal for your nervous system. And so I couldn't pull myself out. And he said I should go to therapy. There's never anything wrong with them. So I went to therapy on my own. And it's there that I started to see my value and that he would never do anything that I needed him to do, or I couldn't get him to understand what I needed. Who, after 32 years, is needing to tell their husband their basic wants and needs? That's a red flag. Like, what's the problem here? Like, how do you not understand to like treat me with respect? Not even respect. He wouldn't even acknowledge me. Like, he stopped talking to me, all those things. And so in therapy, she said, he's either unwilling or he's unable to understand what you need. And one day I finally said, he's unwilling. And that's really all it took. It wasn't anything else. I didn't know he was a narcissist at this time, so it was even bigger, but I have to tell you, the words came out of my mouth to even say, well, maybe we could figure out what else I could do and we could work it out.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times to like he had to hand me on a silver platter. I don't want to be here. And that's the part that really stinks because I know he wanted to be gone, but he wouldn't do it. He wanted me to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I was, and I'm okay. I'm okay being the villain in his story. That's okay.
And I think that's one of the key things. When you finally get out, you realize there was nothing you could have done to have
Yeah.
fixed it because it was a we problem, or it was
Yeah.
a him problem or a her problem. And
Yeah.
so it sounds like just having that realization that there was nothing you could do to fix it to his satisfaction,
Satisfaction.
or
Yes.
and not that
No.
you should have felt any responsibility to fix
Yeah.
it, right? So that was a big change. You said you talked a little bit about doing some inner child work without
Yeah.
getting into what you personally did, because I don't want you sharing your,
Sure.
your inner
Yeah. My
revelations.
results.
But
Yes.
what is that if somebody's just hearing this for the first time?
So I have a great coach who also does some holistic coaching. And so she will just coach me, talk about things almost like going to therapy, but when you work with a coach, you're moving forward in your life and doing some goals. And one of the things as I started to journal and things like that is like, I feel like there's something like, why do I continue to do this thing? Why do I continue to think this way? And then along the way, sometimes it was like, well, sometimes when you do inner child work, you can figure out where the pain or the trauma started. And so that just looked like doing a Zoom session where it was a little meditation. Meditation sounds like somebody's going to tell you to cluck like a chicken. And it's like, that's not what happens. And it's just you're in a meditative state. You have full control of your faculties, but they kind of walk you through some scenarios and you tell them, okay, I see this or I feel this. And then from there, we kind of figured out what was stuck and why I thought the way I thought.
Yeah.
And so it's neat to think about that and think, little Laura just wanted to be loved a certain way.
Right.
And so she spent all her life trying to get love.
Yeah. And I'm a big research geek. Like, I love reading psychological research and studies and all that kind of stuff. And I know that whole attachment theory
Yes.
thing, because that's very much where a lot of psychologists believes that narcissism comes from an unhealthy attachment with the parent, typically the mom, but not always. So, if you can figure out why you keep seeking, or why you seek the relationship styles you seek, then you can make some changes. You can decide if it's good, bad, or if you want to change. Yeah.
Well, and I was just talking to someone recently on a different podcast, and she was saying how whatever she was saying, I said, I want to redirect your thought pattern. This is a mindset change, okay? Because we don't blame for abuse, but we figure out, why do we keep showing up to the circus and why do we keep choosing the clowns? And that's where the work has to happen. And not only that, why are they attracted to us?
Right.
Okay, because no, we can't control anybody else, and no, we don't blame ourselves for getting abused, but we have to keep figuring that out. Where is it that I'm out of integrity with myself that I keep allowing them to come in? And that's good for any relationship, but also for friendships and even in your family. In your family, that's a bigger discussion, but yes,
Right.
even in your family.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, because you're right. If you are in an abusive relationship, you are not to blame for the abuse that's occurring in the relationship.
Right.
And you also made choices
Right.
at different steps along the way.
Yeah.
So acknowledging that those choices, and the choice may have been 30 years ago to go on a second date. That may have been the choice that you made.
Yeah.
But there's
or
still
allowing him to talk to you a certain way,
the
or
first time. Right.
Right. And because it's hard, Marty, it's so hard when you have people are like, oh, I would have left at the first red flag. The first red flag doesn't look red.
Right.
And
it looks beige. It looks beige, maybe.
Well, it's red, but then there's 100 green ones. There were 100 green before and 100 green after. And the red flag is not a punch in the face. A red flag sometimes is like, she looks really good in that dress. And you wouldn't look, you may not, that probably wouldn't be the style that you would want. It's like, oh.
Or it could be nowadays, it could be something like, you've gone on a couple of dates. He sends, or the partner sends it. It's not always men, so I want to be clear on this. The new person sends you a text message
Yes.
You don't respond in the next 2 minutes and they're on the phone calling you. Why aren't
Yes.
you returning my text message? Why are you being so disrespectful to me?
Yeah.
Or because you don't respond with whatever time frame they figure, they ghost you and they won't respond to your text message for 4 or 5 days. And sometimes we don't put all those pieces together,
Yeah.
but we still make the choice to either continue that relationship
Right.
or end it. And we can't say I had no control over that, because we all do, right? We
That
all
part.
have
Yes.
control. But once you're in the relationship, once you're financially bound to them, once there's the trauma bonding that's going on, once there's
Yeah.
physical abuse and all that stuff, and fear of your kids, fear of your pets, fear of all
Yeah.
this stuff, then that is definitely not anybody's blame. But we have
Right.
to identify where. I love that saying, why do we keep showing up at the circus? Why do we keep choosing the clowns? Right? I love that.
Look, I'm talking about myself, okay?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's so this is the kind of thing I don't want to do. So like even going on a couple of dates, I did not like get dressed up to the hilt so that they will like me, because I'm going to show up like I need to show up. I'm going to show up the way Laura is in this world. That's why like my dating profile, I'm not interested in dating right now, but my dating profile is going to have I like Taylor Swift and I like Disneyland. Whoever wants to be involved in that can come, because I don't want to get made fun of. I don't want to be out of integrity with myself. I don't want to say like, oh,
Right.
well, that's silly, because I don't know how many times I shapeshifted myself to like a certain football team or whatever. And it's like, as women, we've been societalized, be the good girl, don't ruffle feathers, be agreeable. Okay, well, sometimes being agreeable, we get out of integrity with ourselves. And I'm not
Yes.
saying you can't enjoy football with your partner,
Yeah.
but but if they don't reciprocate in any way, that to me just was a sad life to live, to be made fun of all the time and that kind of thing. That was really hurtful. I don't want to live life like that anymore. And
Yeah.
so that, yeah,
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. If the partner enjoys football and you want to, kind of just hold your nose and watch football on Sunday afternoon if you don't
yeah,
like it, if they're willing to go to the craft show with you and walk around and look at all the booths in the craft show, or whatever you like doing, or go fishing, or go
right, right.
hiking or whatever, as long as it's a give and take,
Yeah.
it's healthy. And if
It,
you
it's
can do things that you don't particularly like just because your
right.
partner does. That doesn't mean you're being controlled. But if you're expected to, and if you don't do it, there's going to be
Yes.
consequences. That's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
And so this is the thing when we say there's going to be consequences is, and I do mention this in my book, I was subtly punished by if I didn't hike enough, if wasn't enthusiastic in my hiking, all the things. Look, they're like Lucy with the football with Charlie Brown. Okay. They're going to move the goalpost. They're going to pull the football away. You think everything's great, but they changed the game. So you can't figure out the game. And self-aware narcissists have said this, on social media. They're like, if it remotely looked like they were figuring me out, I'd change the game,
Right.
just because I didn't want them to do that. And so if I didn't hike enough miles or whatever, he'd come home and he would call somebody else, usually a woman, to go hiking with him on a longer hike, and then come home and, you know, all the praises about how great it was. And that's how people are punished.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to go home and he's going to hit you. He's punishing you in subtle ways like that really erode your self-esteem. And that's why I speak so highly on mindset change and your value. Because if you don't love yourself, remember how much you love that clown? You got to love yourself that much.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the kind of stuff you talk about in your chapter, right, Laura, about how you
Yes.
actually did this and how you
Yes.
move forward. If you had to sum up kind of one really critical point that
Mhm.
if you are, the book is all for women, it's written all by women for
Yeah.
women who were sitting in that kind of dark stage of their divorce,
Yeah.
and maybe they're going through dealing with a covert or a extrovert kind of narcissist, or just
Yeah.
a challenging person, just a toxic person.
Mhm.
Um, what's kind of your light at the end of the tunnel thought that you could share today?
Well, that you can actually thrive, not just survive. And that's my biggest thing. And so, but that really takes taking your focus off of them and putting it back onto yourself. And what are your hopes and dreams? What is your value, not just in this world by doing, but you have value right now. And so that's really what I focus on. And just how do you talk to yourself? We have to reset because we maybe have been talked to a certain way. And again, that's why I did some inner child work. What have we heard all our life that maybe are is not true for us, but we've been told certain things, whatever they may be. You already thought of one when I said it. You know what I mean? Like the thing that's coming up in your spirit is the thing that's really, somebody said that to you and somehow you agreed with it. We don't have to agree with it anymore. We can put it down. And so that's the kind of thing that it's just it's that mindset change to be able to thrive, not just survive.
Yeah. And the thing is, that mindset shift or change is
Hmm.
something that you can do on your own. You can
Yes.
do it with a coach, you can do it with a
Yes.
therapist, you can do it with a group, you can do
Yep.
it with whatever. You can even just get books and start making
Yes.
this change. And that's why I think it's so powerful. And
Yeah.
that's the message that Laura shares, not only through her experience, but through her expertise in understanding the all of the nuances of living with narcissists and getting out and becoming amazing women on their own. Look at Laura; she's already international speaker, author, you name it. So, Laura, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for being in the book, and also thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and just giving people some hope and inspiration and some ideas for how to start moving forward once they realize they don't want to stay in a relationship with a narcissist.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I hope it was helpful.
And Laura, I am going to make sure in the show notes information that your podcast, your website, and everything is listed in there. So if you're interested in learning more about Laura and what she does, please make sure you check out down in the show notes. And thank you so much for listening in.